My son's bride had me stopped at the gate of his wedding like I was some homeless woman trying to sneak into a country club. I stood there in my navy blue dress, the one I had saved for 2 years because I wanted to look dignified beside him, holding a small silver clutch and an envelope with a letter I had written at my kitchen table the night before. The vineyard estate in Napa Valley was glowing behind the iron gates. All white roses, champagne glasses, string quartet music, and polished people laughing under the California sun like they had never worried about a bill in their lives. A young woman with a headset looked down at her tablet, then back at me. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name isn't on the guest list." I thought she had made a mistake. Of course I thought that. A mother always believes there must be a mistake before she believes her own child has erased her. "Please check again," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I'm the groom's mother." The woman's face changed. Not with recognition. With pity. "I did check. You're not authorized to enter." Not authorized. I could see my son across the garden, standing near a fountain wrapped in white flowers. Ethan looked beautiful in his black tuxedo. Tall, clean-shaven, expensive haircut, smile sharp enough to cut glass. He was posing for photographs beside his bride, Madison, whose lace dress probably cost more than the car I drove when I first brought him home from foster care. I lifted my hand. "Ethan." His smile froze. That was the first thing that hurt. Not the gate. Not the headset girl. Not even the tablet with my name missing from it was the look on my son's face when he saw me. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't worried. He was angry. He walked toward me fast, careful not to move too much because a photographer was still circling the lawn. "What are you doing here?" he hissed. "I came to your wedding," I said. "They're saying my name isn't on the list." His jaw tightened. "Because it isn't." For a second, the world went quiet. The violins kept playing, but they sounded far away, like music coming from another life. I looked at him and saw all the versions of him I had loved. Ethan at 4, standing in the doorway of a foster home in Fresno with a backpack too big for his shoulders. Ethan at 9, asleep at my kitchen table after I helped him finish Asian's project. Ethan at 16, slamming his bedroom door and then crying into Miss Holder 20 minutes later because some girl had broken his heart. Ethan at 22, hugging me after graduation and saying, "We made it. Mom. We." That word had kept me alive through years of double shifts, second-hand coats, frozen dinners, and hospital bills. "Ethan," I whispered, "I'm your mother." His eyes darted to the guests watching from a distance. "Don't do this here." "Do what?" "This." He gestured at me like I was a spill on the floor. The emotional scene. The guilt. The poor old mother act. Before I could answer, Madison appeared behind him. Smiling that polished little smile rich women use when they want to insult you without raising their voice. "Ethan, sweetheart," she said, the photographer is waiting. Then she looked at me from my sensible shoes to my pinned-up gray hair. "Mrs. Carter, this is already awkward enough." Mrs. Carter. Not Mom. Not Evelyn, not even Ethan's mother. Just Mrs. Carter, like I was someone who had overstayed an appointment. "I don't understand," I said. "You sent me the save the date." Madison gave a soft laugh. "Yes, before the final guest list changed." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "We decided to keep it intimate." I looked over his shoulder at the 300 people drinking champagne in the garden. "Intimate?" Madison stepped closer. Her perfume was sweet and expensive, the kind that announces itself before the woman does. "We wanted a certain atmosphere," she said. "Elegant. Cohesive. People who fit the day. People who fit." There are sentences that do not sound violent until they land in the body. I had raised Ethan on a receptionist salary and night sewing jobs. I had skipped dental work to pay for his tutoring. I had sold my mother's pearl earrings when he needed surgery after a baseball accident. I had worked through bronchitis because private school tuition was due. I had sat up with him through nightmares from the years before I adopted him, telling him over and over, "Nobody is sending you away. You're home now." And here he was, sending me away. At the gate. In front of strangers. Because I did not fit. "Ethan," I said, "did you know about this?" His face hardened in a way I had never seen when he was a boy, but had seen too often since Madison came into his life. Madison and I made this decision together. I waited for him to take it back. Amather can be foolish that way. Even with the knife in her chest, she waits for the person holding it to say they slipped. He didn't. Madison sighed. "Please don't make him feel bad. This is our wedding day." That was when something old and tired inside me sat down. For years, Madison had been shaving pieces off my place in Ethan's life. The first time she came to my house in Sacramento, she looked at the casserole I made and said, "This is cute. Like church basement food." Ethan had laughed under his breath. Not because it was funny. Because he wanted her approval more than he wanted my dignity. After that came the little corrections. Ethan doesn't need you calling every Sunday. We're trying to build our own family now. You should really ask before stopping by. Your apartment is so far. We'll just meet you somewhere neutral. Neutral. Like you was a war zone. When they got engaged, I found out through Instagram. A picture of Madison's hand on Ethan's chest, a diamond catching the light, the caption saying, "Forever starts now." I stared at it while sitting alone in my kitchen, the soup he had made for dinner cooling beside me. Later Ethan called and said, "Mom, don't be dramatic. We were going to tell you." I said congratulations. I even mailed them a check for the engagement party, because when you have loved someone since they were small enough to crawl into your lap, your pride dies slowly. But standing at that gate, watching my son choose public cruelty over private discomfort, I felt something different. Not rage. Not yet. Clarity. I looked at Madison. Then at Ethan. You understand? Ethan blinked. You understand? Yes. I smoothed the front of my dress. You want a wedding without me in it. Madison's smile twitched, like she was disappointed I had not cried. Thank you for being reasonable. Reasonable. I had been reasonable when Ethan forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. I had been reasonable when Madison told me the guest room in their house was not really for long visits. I had been reasonable when they stopped inviting me to Thanksgiving because her parents preferred a smaller table. I had been reasonable when Ethan called only when he needed something fixed, paid, signed, or forgiven. I looked at my son one last time. I hope your wedding is everything you deserve. He flinched, maybe because somewhere inside him he still knew my voice well enough to hear the difference. Mom, don't make this ugly. I smiled. I won't. Then I turned around and walked away before my legs could betray me. The valet boy opened the door of my old silver Toyota as if he felt sorry for the car too. I sat inside, placed the envelope on the passenger seat, and looked through the windshield at the vineyard where my son was marrying a woman who thought I was beneath the scenery. My hands were steady when I took out my phone. I called the one person who knew the truth Ethan never cared to ask. Evelyn, Samuel said when he answered. I thought you were at the wedding. I was, I said. There was silence. What happened? I watched a waiter carry a tray of champagne toward the laughing crowd. My name wasn't on the list. Samuel inhaled sharply. Did Ethan know? Yes. Another silence. Longer this time. Then he said, Are you sure you want me to proceed? I looked at the envelope. Inside was a letter that began, My dear son, I have loved you from the first day I saw you. I picked it up, tore it once, then again, until the words lay in my lap like dead leaves. Yes, I said. Start everything. Evelyn, once I file and transfer the documents, there's no simple way back. There was no way back when he looked me in the eye and let them treat me like trash. Samuel's voice softened. I'm sorry. So am I. What do you want me to do first? I stared at the gates. All of it. The house, the accounts. The company recommendation. The trust. The legal notices. Every safety net I ever hid under him. Evelyn, if I'm not his mother in public, I said, I won't be his secret bank in private. Then I drove away from my son's wedding with rose petals stuck to my tires and 28 years of motherhood cracking open behind me. I did not cry until I reached a gas station 11 miles down the road. I parked beside an air pump, leaned my forehead against the steering wheel, and made a sound so raw I did not recognize myself. A man filling his truck glanced over, then politely looked away. I was grateful for that small mercy. When the sobs stopped, I wiped my face with a napkin from the glove box and looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My lipstick was still perfect. That made me laugh. A broken-hearted woman with perfect lipstick. I drove home to Sacramento in silence. My apartment was small, neat, and warm, filled with framed photos Ethan had slowly stopped noticing. His kindergarten picture. His high school football team. His college graduation. A photo of us at Monterey Bay when was 12, both of us laughing because a seagull had stolen his fries. I took that one down first. Not because I stopped loving the boy in the photo. Because I could no longer let the man he became use that boy as a hostage. I hung my blue dress back in the closet. It had not even been allowed to become wrinkled. Then I made tea, opened my laptop, and watched my email fill with documents from Samuel's office. For most of Ethan's life, I had allowed him to believe I was ordinary. Not poor, exactly, just modest. A retired office manager with a pension, a used car, a careful grocery list, and a habit of saying, don't worry about me. That last part was true. I did not want him worrying about me. But the rest was a costume. My father had built one of the largest agricultural shipping businesses in Central California before he died. He was a quiet, stubborn man who wore work boots to meetings with bankers and trusted land more than people. When he passed, he left me warehouses, investment accounts. My late husband, Robert, had been a tax attorney. He grew what my father left behind, then left his own estate to me when cancer took him 4 years before I met Ethan. By the time I adopted my son, I had more money than I would ever need. But I had also seen what money did to love. I had watched cousins flatter my father while he was alive and fight over his silverware when he died. I had watched Robert's distant relatives cry harder over the will than at the funeral. So I made a decision. Ethan would know comfort, opportunity, education, and safety. He would not know the size of my accounts. I wanted to be loved as mom, not as inheritance. That was my mistake. I paid for things quietly. His private school was covered through a scholarship. His college loans were forgiven by a nonprofit I funded. His first job at a prestigious architecture firm in San Francisco came after I made a call to a partner whose first office building had been financed through one of my father's companies. Ethan's house in Walnut Creek, the one Madison loved showing off on social media, was bought through an LLC Samuel created for privacy. Ethan paid a small amount each month and called it his mortgage. I paid the real one. He thought he was rising. I let him. Maybe that was love, maybe it was vanity. Maybe I wanted to prove I could build a good man by giving him everything except greed. But you cannot hide money from greed forever. Greed has a nose. Madison smelled power around Ethan before she knew where it came from. She came from the kind of family that called itself old money because her grandfather once owned 2 car dealerships and her mother knew how to arrange hydrangeas. Her parents lived in a gated community outside Napa and spoke about legacy the way hungry people speak about food. At first, Madison treated me with bright politeness. Then she saw my apartment, my old Toyota, my coupon drawer, and my sensible shoes. After that, I became an obstacle. Not because I controlled Ethan, because I reminded him of where he came from. The morning after the wedding, my phone had 17 missed calls. None from Ethan. Most were from his Aunt Carol, who had not been invited either but had apparently seen wedding photos online. Evelyn, her voicemail said, "Tell me you weren't left out of that wedding. Tell me there's an explanation." There was an explanation. It was just ugly. I did not call anyone back. On the third day, while Ethan and Madison were on their honeymoon in Maui, he finally called. I was sitting at my dining table reviewing a rental notice Samuel had drafted. "Mom," Ethan said when I answered, his voice tight with irritation instead of shame. "I need you to go by the house." I looked at the phone. "What? Our house? In Walnut Creek." Madison forgot to ask someone to water the fiddle-leaf fig, and there are packages coming. Also the cleaning lady cancelled, so can you just tidy up before we get back? Her parents are coming over Sunday. For a moment, I thought grief had made me hallucinate. "You want me to clean your house?" "Don't say it like that." "How should I say it?" "Mom, please. You already made the wedding weird. Can you not make this a whole thing too?" A whole thing. Being barred from my son's wedding was apparently a scheduling inconvenience. A scene to be managed. A stain to be scrubbed before Madison's parents visited. "I won't be able to do that," I said. He exhaled loudly. "Why not?" "Because I'm busy." "With what?" "My life." There was a pause. Then Madison's voice came through, farther away but sharp. "Is she seriously refusing?" Ethan said, "Madison, I'm handling it." The phone rustled. Then she was on. "Evelyn," she said, using the tone people use with customer service, "we are trying to enjoy our honeymoon. Ethan is upset enough already." "Is he?" "You showed up uninvited." "I showed Upis his mother." "You showed up after we had made boundaries clear." "Boundaries," I repeated. "Yes. Healthy families have them." I smiled at my laptop screen, where the legal notice waited. "You're right, Madison. Boundaries are important." She seemed pleased for half a second. "I'm glad you understand." "I do. So I'm setting mine." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm retiring." "From what?" "From being useful to people who are ashamed of me." I hung up. My hands shook afterward, but not from fear. From the body's confusion when a woman finally says no after decades off saying yes. That afternoon, Samuel filed the first documents. The credit card Madison used for salon appointments, designer shoes, wellness retreats, and lunches she called networking, stopped working at 2:14 p.m. Pacific Time. The automatic payments on the Walnut Creek house stopped at midnight. The private health policy Ethan thought came through his employer was not renewed. The family loan I had extended for Madison's failed lifestyle blog was called due under the agreement she had signed without reading because she assumed old women did not hire serious lawyers. And the trust I had once planned to leave entirely to Ethan was amended. Not destroyed. Not out of cruelty. Redirected. Half to foster youth scholarships. Half to a foundation for older women abandoned by family. Ethan's name remained in one place. A conditional clause. If he completed 2 years of therapy, paid back the expenses he had fraudulently represented as business needs, and made a written public acknowledgement of my role in his life. He could receive a modest annual amount. Not enough to make him rich. Enough to keep him from starving if he became humble. Samuel called it generous. I called it motherhood with a spine. The first real explosion came 5 days after the wedding. Ethan called from Maui at 6:32 a.m. my time. Mom, what the hell is going on? I was watering basil on my balcony. Good morning to you too. Our card got declined at the resort. Your card? Madison's card. The one for emergencies. Madison used it for a $900 facial and a private cabana rental. That isn't an emergency. How do you know that? Because it was my card. He went silent. Your card? Yes. It hot dad set that up. Your father has been dead for 31 years, Ethan. Emian, I thought it was family money. It was. Mine. Madison was speaking in the background, fast and panicked. Ethan lowered his voice. Mom, don't do this. Do what? Punish me because you got your feelings hurt. There it was. Not because he humiliated me. Not because he elite. Not because he let the woman he married treat me like a servant. Because I got my feelings hurt. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm no longer funding you. Funding me? What are you talking about? The house. The card. The insurance. The repairs on your car last year. Madison's blog loan. Your graduate certificate program. The landscaping. The property taxes. His breathing changed. That's not possible. It is. No. I pay the mortgage. You pay $1,200 a month to an LLC that owns the house. The actual mortgage, taxes, and insurance are paid by me. He said nothing. I heard waves in the background. Or maybe it was blood rushing in my ears. Finally, he said, why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to know who you were when you thought I had nothing to give. That landed. I could tell by the silence. Then Madison grabbed the phone. You vindictive old bitch. I looked at the basil leaves, small and bright in the morning light. Goodbye, Madison. Don't you dare hang up on me. Do you know who my father is? Yes. A retired dealership owner who owes more than he admits. She gasped. I hung up. By noon, Madison had posted about me. Not by name at first, just a long, tearful Instagram story about toxic mothers, financial abuse, and elderly narcissists who can't let their sons become husbands. She said Ethan had been traumatized by my behavior at the wedding. She said I had tried to force my way into a private event. She said I was unstable, jealous, and obsessed with controlling their marriage. By evening, she used my full name. Evelyn Carter. She posted a photo of me at the gate, taken from a distance, my shoulders slightly bent, my blue dress plain against the bright luxury behind me. The caption read, "This woman tried to ruin me wedding because she couldn't accept that she was no longer the most important woman in my husband's life." Within hours, strangers were calling me a monster. Let your son live, Grandma. Boy, moms are terrifying. She looks like she Kamito begged for money. Security should have dragged her out. I would joke for people eating dinner on their couches. Then I saw it. A stranger can misunderstand you. Your child has to choose it. That night, I opened the hall closet and took out a box I had not touched in years. Inside were adoption papers, school photos, hospital records, tuition receipts, birthday cards, letters Ethan had written me in crooked child handwriting. One said, "Mom, thank you for picking me." I held that one for a long time. Then I placed it beside the legal documents. Love is evidence too. It just does not always protect you. The next morning, I went to San Francisco. Not in my Toyota. In the black Mercedes I kept registered under a company name and used only for board meetings. I wore a cream suit, pearl earrings, and the watch Robert gave me the year before he died. The office building where Ethan worked rose 39 stories above Mission Street, all glass and money. He had always told people he got there through talent. Talent had helped. My phone calls had helped more. The receptionist recognized my name immediately. People who work around wealth always do. Miss Carter, Mr. Whitman is expecting you. Graham Whitman, senior partner at the architecture firm, met me at the elevator with the expression of Aman who had dreaded this day for years. Evelyn, he said. I'm very sorry. Don't be sorry. Be honest. He nodded and led me into a conference room. Ethan was already there. He stood when I entered, then slowly sat back down. He looked like he had not slept. For the first time in years, his face did not look polished. It looked young. Afraid. Mom, he said. I sat across from him. Graham placed a folder on the table. I asked for a full performance review, I said. Without favors, without quiet corrections. Without anyone protecting my son because they respected him. Ethan stared at Graham. What is this? Graham opened the folder. Missed deadlines. Client complaints. Billing irregularities. Design errors corrected by senior staff. A major hotel project nearly lost because Ethan submitted old structural notes. A written warning that had never been escalated because Graham had called me first and I had asked him to give Ethan time. Ethan flipped through the pages, his face draining. This ice exaggerated. Graham's voice was flat. It is documented. You never told me it was this bad. We did, Graham said, you blamed your team. Ethan looked at me. You set me up. No, I said. I held you up. There's a difference. His mouth opened, then closed. I leaned forward. For years, I asked people to give you another chance. I thought pressure would break you. I thought love meant softening the world before it touched you. But Allie taught you was that consequences were optional. Mom, please don't do this here. I almost laughed at the wedding, he had said the same thing. Don't do this here. Apparently truth was only acceptable in rooms where nobody could see him. Graham cleared his throat. Ethan, effective immediately, you are on unpaid leave pending investigation. Given the client complaints and the circumstances around several internal reports, termination is likely. Ethan looked as if the chair had disappeared beneath him. You can't. Graham's face hardened. I can. And I should have sooner. Ethan turned to me. Are you happy now? I thought about that. No, I said. But I am done being ashamed for you. As I stood, he whispered, you're really going to destroy me over outing? I looked at him. No, Ethan. The wedding only showed me you had already destroyed something. I'm just cleaning up what's left. When I left the building, my phone was exploding. Madison had posted again. This time she cried on camera. She said I had used money to abuse them. She said I was trying to make them homeless. She said Ethan was the victim of a manipulative adoptive mother who never loved him unless obeyed. Adoptive. She said it like a stain. Then came the part that changed everything. She isn't even his real mother. Madison said, wiping perfect tears from her face. She adopted him, and now she thinks that means she owns him. I replayed that sentence 4 times. Not because I needed to hear it. Because I needed to remember exactly how low she was willing to go. That evening, Samuel called. You have grounds for defamation. I know. I can file tomorrow. Do it. There's something else, he said. His tone made Mistamok tighten. What? Madison's father called my office. Why? He asked if there was any way to negotiate privately before the lease notice goes out. Lease notice? The house. They received the preliminary email. And? He threatened to expose personal information about Ethan's adoption if you proceeded. I sat very still. What information? Samuel hesitated. Evelyn, are you sitting down? Yes. Ethan's biological mother was not who the agency file said she was. My hand tightened around the phone. What are you talking about? I looked into the sealed records years ago at your request, remember? Only medical history. At the time, there was nothing actionable. But Madison's father appears to have obtained a private investigator's report. I don't know how. He claims Ethan's biological family had money, significant money. The room tilted. That's impossible. I'm not saying he's right. I'm saying he thinks it gives him leverage. I looked at the photos still remaining on the wall. Ethan at prom, Ethan with braces. Ethan holding a Christmas stocking. Why would he care? Because if Ethan has a claim somewhere, Madison may have married him for more than your hidden support. The second twist did not feel like a twist. It felt like a trapdoor opening under a grave. For years, I had feared Ethan might love me only if he knew I was rich. Now I had to ask something worse. Had Madison known there might be money somewhere else? And had Ethan known too? I told Samuel to find out everything. Then I did something he had never done in my life. I went live. Not that night. I waited 2 days. I gathered documents. I slept badly. I drank too much coffee. I listened to voicemails from Carol begging me to defend myself. I watched Madison's posts reach 500,000 views while people turned my pain into a debate about mothers-in-law. Then I set my phone on a tripod in my living room, sat in my cream armchair, and pressed the button. At first, only 23 people joined. Then 100. Then 700. Then thousands. I looked into the camera and said, my name is Evelyn Carter. I'm the woman my son's bride called a jealous, abusive, fake mother. I am 71 years old, and before anyone else tells you my story, you're going to hear it from me. My voice did not shake. That surprised me. I told them I adopted Ethan when he was 4. I did not show his childhood face at first. I protected that boy even while exposing the man. I explained how he came to me afraid of closed doors and loud footsteps. How he slept with a flashlight under his pillow. How it took 8 months before he believed I would still be there in the morning. I told them about the night he had pneumonia and I slept upright in a hospital chair for 3 days because he cried whenever I tried to leave. I told them about the baseball surgery, the private school meetings, the college applications, the panic attacks, the graduation. I showed receipts, not to brag, but to establish facts. Then I played the first audio. Madison at a dinner 6 months earlier, not knowing my phone was recording because it had started recording after she accused me of making up insults. Evelyn doesn't match the image we're building, Madison said in the recording. She looks like somebody's retired housekeeper. Being faster. Then I played Ethan's voicemail from 2 weeks before the wedding. Mom, don't make this difficult. Madison's family is very particular. We're just trying to avoid awkwardness. I looked into the camera. Awkwardness was me. Then I showed the guest list. My name missing. Madison's yoga instructor included. Herprin's neighbors included. A lifestyle photographer included. But not me. By then, 40,000 people were watching. My phone buzzed. Ethan. I ignored it. Then Madison joined the live from her own account. I saw her request pop up. Samuel, sitting off camera, shook his head. I accepted, her face appeared beside mine, flushed and furious. You are insane, she said. Good evening, Madison. Take this down. No, you're violating our privacy. You posted my name, my face, and lies about my character. You opened the door. She laughed bitterly. You're proving everything I said. You're controlling, vindictive, and obsessed with my husband. I held up the deed to the Walnut Creek house. Did you tell people this house belongs to you and Ethan? Her eyes flicked. We live there. That wasn't my question. She said nothing. I held up the credit agreement for her business loan. Did you tell people I financially abused you, or did you forget you signed this agreement when you borrowed $85,000 from me for a blog that made $312? Her face went red. You offered that money. Yes. And you called it a loan when you wanted to seem like a businesswoman. Now you call it abuse because repayment is inconvenient. That might have worked if she had not checked her own reflection while doing it. Then I said, tell them what you said about me not being his real mother. Her mouth tightened. I meant biologically. No. You meant cruelly. Adoption doesn't give you the right to own him. No, I said. It gave me the privilege of loving him when nobody else stayed. For the first time, Madison had no quick answer. Then Samuel slid a printed page onto the table beside me. I glanced down. My breath stopped. He had found the investigator's report. Madison saw my face change and mistook it for weakness. Careful, Evelyn. She said softly. There are things about Ethan's past you don't know. I lifted my eyes. You mean the private investigation your father ordered before the engagement? Her face went white. The live chat exploded. I turned the paper toward the camera, covering sensitive details with my hand. Madison's family investigated my son's sealed adoption history before she agreed to marry him. Madison whispered, that's not true. Your father's name is on the invoice. She disappeared from the live. She just vanished. For 3 seconds, I sat there with my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. Then I looked at the camera and said, I'm ending this now. My attorney will handle the rest. I stopped the live. The silence in my apartment afterward felt enormous. Samuel took the paper from my hand. I'm sorry, he said. Read it, Tom. Evelyn, read it. He did. Ethan's biological mother had been a young woman named Grace Whitaker. She came from a wealthy East Coast family that had hidden her pregnancy. Grace died of an overdose 3 years later. The Whitakers had no legitimate claim process open. There was no guaranteed fortune waiting. But there was rumor, shame, and enough possibility to attract people like Madison's father. He had found out before the engagement. Madison had known. Maybe she thought Ethan would inherit from me. Maybe she thought he could claim something from the Whitakers. Maybe she saw him as a door into 2 possible vaults and smiled until the hinges opened. The next morning, Ethan came to my apartment. I knew because he pounded on the door like a man who still believed every door with my name on it belonged to him. Mom, open up. Samuel was there. So was Carol. She had arrived with groceries and fury, declaring, nobody is bullying my sister in her own home. I opened the door with the chain on. Ethan looked wrecked. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes red. Please, he said. I need to talk to you. Talk. Not through a cane. The chain stays. Pain crossed his face, and for a moment I hated myself for causing it. Then I remembered the gate. He swallowed. I didn't know about the investigator. Did you know she didn't want me at the wedding? He looked down. That's not the same. It is to me. Mom, she got in my head. She kept saying you were manipulating me, that you made me feel guilty, that I needed to choose my wife. And you chose. I made a mistake. No, I said. A mistake is forgetting a name card. You watched your mother get turned away from your wedding and you were embarrassed that I existed. He pressed his hand against the door. I was ashamed. The honesty almost broke me. Of me? His mouth trembled. Of where I came from. Carol made a sound behind me. Ethan started crying. I spent my whole life feeling like I had to outrun being that foster kid. Madison made me feel like I finally belonged somewhere polished. Powerful. Like I could be someone else. You were already someone, I said. I know. No, Ethan. You don't. Because if you knew, you would never have needed them to make you feel real. He wiped his face. Is it true? About my biological family? I closed my eyes. Of course. There it was. Not, are you okay, Mom? Not, how could I hurt you? Is it true? I opened my eyes. Which part matters to you? He stared at me. What? The dead young woman who gave birth to you? The family that hid you? Or the money Madison's father hoped you could reach? That's not fair. Neither was the gate. He stepped back as if I had slapped him. For the first time, I saw him clearly. Not as the little boy with the broken teddy bear. Not as the teenager with scraped knees. As a grown man standing in a hallway, wanting comfort from the woman he had discarded. Wanting answers about money from the mother he had denied. I loved you, I said, I still love some part of you. But I will not be used as a bridge back to comfort. Mom, please. The lease notice stands. The lawsuit stands. The trust has changed. Your job situation is between you and your employer. His face twisted. So you're just cutting me off? Yes. I'm your son. At the wedding, you made it clear I was not. Your mother when it counted. I was angry. You were honest. He cried harder then, and I almost opened the door. Almost. A mother's body remembers before her mind can stop it. My hand moved toward the chain. Carol touched my wrist. Evelyn, she whispered. I pulled my hand back. Ethan saw. That was the moment understood. Not that I was angry. That I was done rescuing him from the shape of his own choices. I hope you get help, I said. Then I closed the door. For 10 minutes, he stayed in the hallway. I heard him crying. I stood on the other side, one hand over my mouth, shaking so hard Carol had to hold me. People think revenge feels like fire, sometimes it feels like frostbite. You know something is dying, but first it goes numb. The next weeks were chaos. The live video reached millions. News blogs picked it up. Podcasts debated it. Women wrote me messages so long and painful I could only read a few at a time. Mothers abandoned by adult children. Fathers drained by greedy sons. Grandmothers pushed out of weddings, births, holidays, homes they had helped buy. Madison tried to fight back. She posted a statement saying my evidence was selectively presented. Then Samuel sent a cease and desist letter with attachments. The statement disappeared. Her employer, a luxury bridal boutique in San Francisco, placed her on leave after customers flooded their page with screenshots of her calling me a fake mother. Then a former coworker posted that Madison had mocked brides who came in with budget bodies and mall moms. That ended the boutique job. Her father tried to intimidate Samuel again. Samuel responded by filing a complaint related to unlawful access of sealed personal records. Suddenly Madison's family went quiet. Ethan's firm terminated him after 11 business days. Not because of the wedding scandal, though I'm sure it didn't help, because the internal review uncovered enough negligence to make keeping him a liability. The Walnut Creek house became the center of their war. Madison wanted him to let them stay until things calmed down. Ethan asked Samuel whether I would consider selling it to him for what he had already paid. Samuel sent back a ledger showing that Ethan's payments over 5 years did not cover even half the property taxes. There was no reply. 30 days after the notice, they left. I did not go watch. I did not want the satisfaction of seeing them carry boxes out of a life they had mistaken for their own achievement. Satisfaction can become poison if you drink too deeply, but the neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, called me. They fought in the driveway, she said. The bride threw a lamp. Was anyone hurt? No. Just the lamp. Good. She called you evil. I've been called worse this month. Mrs. Alvarez paused, then said, for what it's worth, I always wondered why they never had you over. You seemed kind. That made me cry more than the insults. Kind. I had forgotten that word could still belong to me. The lawsuit ended faster than expected. Madison's attorney advised settlement after Samuel submitted the audio, posts, financial documents, and the investigator invoice. Madison issued a public apology. It was stiff, bloodless, and clearly written by a lawyer. I made statements about Evelyn Carter that were inaccurate and harmful. I regret the damage caused. No mention of cruelty. No mention of the wedding gate. No mention of adoption. But it was enough. The money from the settlement went directly into the foundation. I named it the Open Door Fund. Not because every door should stay open. Because some children spend years waiting outside one. And some mothers need help closing one. Ethan called me 19 times in the first month. I answered once. It was late. Rain tapped softly against my apartment windows. I had been packing dishes because I had decided to move. Sacramento suddenly felt full of ghosts. Every street had a memory of Ethan in it, the school where I dropped him off. The diner where we ate pancakes after dentist appointments. The little park where he learned to ride a bike and shouted, "Don't let go," even after I already had. When the phone rang from an unknown number, Inu. I answered. Mom? His voice was small. I sat down on a cardboard box, yes. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. For years, I had imagined those words as a key. It hot if he ever said them, some locked room inside me would open and everything would rush back whole. But the words arrived tired. Thin. Late. What are you sorry for? I asked. He cried quietly. Everything. That's too easy. I'm sorry I let Madison treat you that way. I'm sorry I didn't invite you. I'm sorry I cared what people thought. I'm sorry I took the house and the money and everything like it was mine. I'm sorry I made you feel small. My throat burned. You didn't make me small, Ethan, you showed me how small you were willing to make yourself to stand beside people who despised where you came from. He was silent. Then he said, I left Madison. I looked down at my hands. Why? She lied about the investigator. She knew before we got engaged. Her dad told her there might be a biological family estate. She said it didn't matter, but it did. When she found out your trust changed and the Whitaker thing wasn't simple, she changed. She said I ruined her life. There was twist 3, thought by then nothing surprised me. Madison had not married my son. She had married Arimer. I'm sorry, I said. He gave a broken laugh. You're sorry? I'm sorry you had to learn it this way. Can I see you? No, the word came out before guilt could soften it. Mom, no, Ethan. I'm in therapy. I'm glad. I got a job. Not like before. Smaller firm, less money. That's good. I'm trying. I hope you keep trying. He breathed shakily. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I looked at a photo on the table, the Monterey one. I had not packed it yet. I'm working on forgiving you, I said. But forgiveness is not the same as access. He began to cry again. I don't know who I am without you. That sentence hurt because once it would have pulled me across any distance. But now I heard the danger inside it. A child says that because he needs love. A grown man says that because he has avoided becoming responsible for himself. You are going to find out, I said. What if I can't? You can. How do you know? Because I did. I hung up gently. Not angrily. That mattered to me. 3 months later, I moved to a house in Santa Barbara with white walls, blue shutters, and a lemon tree in the back garden. It was not the biggest house I owned. It was simply the first one Icos without considering whether Ethan would like the guest room. On my first morning there, I made coffee and drank it on the patio while fog lifted off the ocean. I did not check my phone. I did not wait for anyone to need me. I did not plan my day around being useful. At 71, usefulness had become a cage I had mistaken for love. I began painting again. Badly at first. Then less badly. I joined a walking group with women who talked about books, knees, politics, grandchildren, divorces, recipes, and the strange freedom of becoming invisible to people who once consumed your whole life. I gave my first talk for the Open Door Fund in a community center in Oakland. I expected 20 people. More than 200 came. Some were older women. Some were foster parents. Some were adult children who cried because they had been cruel to someone who loved them and did not know how to repair it. I stood at the podium with my hands resting on the paper, then pushed the paper aside. My son removed me from his wedding guest list, I said. But the deeper wound was that I had removed myself from my own life long before that. I thought sacrifice was proof of love. Sometimes it is. But sometimes sacrifice becomes a language abusers learn to demand. The room was silent. I continued. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional access. It does not mean funding disrespect. It does not mean standing at a gate, begging to be recognized by someone who knows exactly who you are. A woman in the front row covered her face and sobbed. After the talk, she hugged me and whispered, "My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 4 years unless she needs rent." I held her and said the only thing I knew was true. You are still a person when they don't need you. The foundation grew. Samuel said I had accidentally become a public figure. I told him not to insult me. He laughed for the first time in months. Carol visited often. She brought terrible muffins and excellent gossip. We sat in my garden and argued about whether I should date. Absolutely not, I said, you're not dead. I'm tired. That's not the same thing. One afternoon, she handed me my phone. You need to read this. It was an email from Ethan. Not a long one. Not dramatic. Mom, I know I don't have the right to call you that the way I used to. My therapist says I need to tell the truth without asking for comfort afterward. I was ashamed of being adopted because I thought it made me unwanted. You spent my whole life proving I was wanted, and I still chose people who made me feel superior instead of grateful. I liked the life you gave me more than I respected the person who gave it. I don't expect the house, the trust, the job, or your time. I'm writing because I finally understand that losing those things was not the punishment. Losing your trust was. I hope one day I become someone you would not be ashamed to have raised. Ethan, I read it twice. Then a third time. Carol watched him carefully. Well? I placed the phone on the table. It's a beginning. Are you going to answer? Not today. She nodded. That night, I printed the email and put it in a drawer. Not with his childhood cards. Not with legal documents. Somewhere separate. A place for things that were neither healed nor hopeless. 6 months after the wedding, Madison tried to return to social media with a rebrand. Starting over, she called it. People did not let her. The internet can be cruel, but sometimes it remembers accurately. She eventually moved to Arizona, according to someone who knew someone. Her marriage to Ethan ended quietly. No vineyard. No string quartet. No white roses. Just signatures. Ethan kept working at the small firm. Samuel heard from Graham that he was showing up early, taking feedback, and not mentioning connections. He rented a one-bedroom apartment in Oakland. He sold the watch Madison had given him. He started volunteering twice a month with foster teens. When Samuel told me that, I had to sit down. Not because I wanted to run back. Because hope is dangerous when it wears a familiar face. Do you want me to tell him you know? Samuel asked. No, why? Because if he's changing for applause, he hasn't changed. Samuel smiled sadly. You're tougher than you used to be. No, I said. I'm just finally including myself in the people I protect. A year after the wedding, a thick envelope arrived. Inside was a photograph. Ethan. Standing with 3 teenage boys in front of a community center, holding pizza boxes and smiling awkwardly. On the back, he had written, I did not tell them my story. I just listened to theirs. I think I understand now why you fought so hard for me. There was no request. No guilt. No, please call. Just that. I cried for a long time. Then I placed the photo on my mantle. Not in the center. But not in a drawer. That is the truth people do not like in stories like mine. Healing is not always a door flying open. Sometimes it is a photograph allowed back into the room. I have not invited Ethan to my house. I have not restored his inheritance. I have not pretended the wedding did not happen. But last month, I wrote him a letter. Ethan, I received the photograph. I am glad you are learning how to listen. I loved you completely when you were a child. I will always be grateful I got to be your mother then. The man you became hurt me deeply, and I am still building a life that does not depend on whether you understand that. Keep going to therapy. Keep your job. Keep showing up when nobody praises you for it. Keep becoming someone who does not need wealth, status, or a woman's approval to feel human. I forgive you enough to want you well. I do not trust you enough to let you close. Both things are true. Evelyn, I mailed it before I could change my mind. He did not answer for 2 weeks. Then a postcard came. No apology. No begging. Just 4 words. I'll keep earning it. I stood in my kitchen holding that postcard while sunlight moved across the floor. For the first time since the gate, I felt something inside loosen. Not open. Not yet. But loosen. Maybe someday we will sit across from each other in a coffee shop. Maybe he will tell me about the boys at the community center. Maybe I will tell him about my lemon tree. Maybe we will build something new from the ruins, something smaller than before but more honest. Or maybe we won't. I have learned to survive both possibilities. People still ask me if I regret cutting him off. They ask it carefully, as if motherhood is a courtroom and I must prove I suffered enough before choosing myself. I tell them no. I do not regret adopting Ethan. I do not regret the lunches I packed, the fevers I cooled, the tuition I paid, the nightmares I held him through. That love was real even if gratitude did not grow where I planted it. I do not regret the wedding gate either. Painful as it was, it gave me the one gift my own devotion had denied me. The truth. My son did not lose his mother because he was cruel. He lost the version of me that believed love required self-erasure. As for Madison, I sometimes think of her standing in that white dress, guarding a garden she did not own, beside a man whose life she did not understand, smiling because she believed humiliation was power. She was wrong. Power was not the gate. Power was walking away from it. Power was signing the documents. Power was telling the truth without screaming. Power was closing the door while my heart broke on both sides of it. This morning, I watered my lemon tree before breakfast. The air smelled like salt and jasmine. My hands looked old in the sunlight, wrinkled and veined, but strong. These hands had held a frightened boy, worked late nights, written checks, packed boxes, signed lawsuits, painted ugly little seascapes, and finally learned how to let go. At 72, I am not the abandoned mother at the wedding gate. I am not the bitter old woman Madison tried to sell to strangers. I am not the secret bank Ethan mistook for destiny. I am Evelyn Carter. A woman who loved deeply. A woman who lost honestly. A woman who discovered, very late but not too late, that dignity is not what your family gives you in public. It is what you refuse to surrender in private. And that became the only inheritance I was finally proud to keep.